Hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show. I am Scott Roberts. Scotty, some may call me. And I am the host of this show, the Intrepid radio program, which does not start for about 3 minutes. We started 3 minutes after the top of the hour over on the radio station. That is Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio.com. You can go over there to listen to this show in its audio format only, because really the only plus to being here on the YouTube channel or on Facebook or some of the other places where we simulcast is not that I have this glorious television production, but that you can see my face talking and you can join the chat room. That's the best part about the video broadcast. And so join us in here with the other Intrepids, and you can become part of this conversation tonight. And it doesn't always all go just about what I'm talking about. And so remember also, we have the show, which lasts 1 hour, just about. And we go off air right around 10 o'clock Central Time. And then we have a little break in between, and we go to the captain's cabin, which is where you'll be able to come in and make your comments and call in. That is the more informal part of the show, the post show. Elvis is here smashing the like button. Thank you, Elvis. I appreciate that. And ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has entered the building. John H.R. Piper is here. Good to see you, brother. What is hello from balmy Inver Grove, Minnesota. Yes, that is a little more south of the Twin Cities, isn't it? By about a half an hour. So it's not overly balmy there, but it's balmy here today, isn't it, John? It's been kind of nice. We got 1 minute until we go live over on the radio station, folks. So this is just the pre-show. Don't sweat it too much. Yeah, folks, we were up in the 50s today here after we had a cold snap and snow, and now we're back up into the 50s, which is autumn weather. And we'll see, all over, says John. That's right. Matthew says, nice topic, Scotty, a break from this mess. Oh, yes, the Israeli stuff going on. Israel warring with Hamas. All right, folks, we've got just a few seconds and we're going to go dark. I need you to sit tight where you are, and we'll be back any moment with the beginning of the show. So I'm going to get out of here, and you all just sit right where you are. We'll be right back.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. I am your host, Scotty Roberts. This is my show, the Intrepid radio program. We've been broadcasting here on Odyssey Radio in one form or another ever since, I think it was 2018 or 2019, August. And we've been broadcasting Intrepid Radio for roughly 20 years. I think 2000 was the year we began. And we've been in this format on this show, this station, for about 4 years now. So welcome to the program. Glad you could make it here tonight on a Friday night. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you all had a good end to your week. And hopefully you don't have to work all weekend like some of us do. So welcome to everybody. I just want to say hey to a couple of people out there. Elvis is here. Elvis is in the building. Michelle Kenham-Free is here. John Piper is here. Matthew Sainsbury from Barbados, we call him Captain Barbados, is here as well. And others are coming in, just not everybody's shown their face in the chat room yet. If you want to listen to this show in its audio format only, just hike your little butt on over to Odyssey Radio. That's ODYSY radio.com. You can hear this show in its audio format only. And if you want to join us in the chat room tonight live, you can come over right now over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And there you will find the other Intrepids already busily engaged in chatting with each other. Before we go too much further, I want to mention, I get into some conversations every now and then with people, and not always ones I like, but every now and then a political conversation comes up. And I had a little exchange, well, a bunch of interchanges with a friend of mine of over 30 years, well, about 30 years ago, 93 we met. And he's a fellow artist, and he's somebody that he used to come to my house every Friday night back when the X-Files was on air, showing when it was live on air, not live television. You know what I mean? Live. It was on air, not in syndication. And so we'd come over Fridays, we get pizza, we would watch the X-Files, and then we moved out to the ranch, which was about 45 minutes away from the city. He would still come out every Friday night. We'd have pizza, we watched the X-Files. We did a lot of philosophizing, a lot of political talk over the years. We didn't always see eye to eye politically, but he was also somebody that when he spent time in my studio, we were both working for another company, and we took time to do illustrations for a book. We were both doing illustrations for kids' books. And we sat in my studio over in uptown Minneapolis for a couple of weeks, and we'd listen to Rush Limbaugh. And this is Rush Limbaugh back in the early 90s. And he would hate it. Oh, I can't believe you listen to this guy. But then as the couple of weeks were drawing to a close, well, all throughout the couple of weeks, he'd always say, damn it. I said, what? He goes, he's right. And I said, of course he is. And so these are the kinds of, we've had conversations like this over the years. And right now, I would say he is more of he comes across as a dyed-in-the-wool progressive, liberal, leftist progressive. Now, maybe he is smarter than your average liberal progressive Democrat, and maybe he's got other views that kind of span the middle of the gap and so on. But almost everything I see him post lately, it's like a lot of the people who are on that far left, rather than speak about ideas and moving things forward and progressing, as their title says they are, they spend an awful lot of time digging on Trump followers. My own friend has referred to me as a Trump cultist. And I laughed with him the first time he said that, but he said it a few times. He says, you're just part of a cult. And I said, I think you know me better than that. He is also an atheist. Raised Catholic, he's an atheist. And we've had our debates on that. He's my buddy. I used to call him, his name is Jim. I used to call him Reverend Jim of the Church of Skeptic. And that would just drive him nuts. No, I'm not. I said, skepticism is just a surrogate for religion. I said, it's where you put all your beliefs. Well, I don't believe in anything. I said, yeah, you do. You believe in nothing. And so anyway, that conversation, this is just setting some of the background for who he is. And every now and then he puts up a post and I say, I should ignore it. But he's either doing this to tweak me or other people that he refers to as being part of the cult of Trump, or he's doing it without realizing that. And sometimes I'm drawn into a response to him. So I responded. He put up the pictures of the 4 people that were indicted along with Trump, of the 19 others that were indicted, who cut deals with the prosecution and did a plea bargain, and they're going to sing on Trump, is what they expect of them now. And I put a real simple post, and I said, wow, I wonder what they had on these people. Because these were people that believed in what they were doing, believed in who they were supporting, yet they folded. They rolled over. And I said, what would make somebody roll over like that? And I said, I wonder what they had on them. And of course, as you find, if you get into political debates with anybody online, in social media, At least I do it with people I know. You will find that there's a lot of people you don't know. If you pose a question to somebody, a whole group will come and have at you because, oh, well, we've got to put you in your place. You're obviously a cultist and all of this and all of that. And so, I deal with that. I have dealt with that kind of thing more times over the last 20 years than I care to remember. But I don't usually ever get rattled. That stuff. Remember my philosophy, folks? I am unoffendable. You cannot be offended by anybody unless you appropriate their intended offense. I just don't appropriate the offense. So it doesn't matter to me. And I talk my piece. Sometimes I will say, you know what? You're right. I didn't look into that. It doesn't happen often because I'm right too much of the time. And it's a little humor there, folks. And so today there was a little exchange, and some of my friends' people all came in and they wanted to have their say at me. And it's not just, hey, Scotty, I'm a friend of Jim's, I'm a relative of Jim's. Let's have a teachable moment. Do you have a teachable spirit? Can I tell you something? Can I share something with you? It's never that tone. The tone is always something like, you poor sorry man. You obviously are a cult. You're brainwashed. You're this. You know what? The teachable moment goes out the window for me as soon as you start calling me names. Then I'm not there for teachable moment. Looking for reaction, says Michelle. Yeah. And stuff like instigator, gaslighter, looking for reactions, gang mentality. Exactly. So I wrote to my buddy and I wanted to read this to you because it included a great quote that I found at the end. My buddy, we were talking back and forth, and his people, he didn't say much to me. About the only thing that he said to me was, says, you're lost, man. And this is on top of calling me a cultist and all of that. And so I responded to that. And I said, I know you have to maintain a certain stance. I need my glasses for this to read my own stuff. I said, I know you need to maintain a certain stance and keep up a good face for all those around you who would drown you in ridicule if you were to break from your partisan rhetoric and use that beautiful critical mind of yours to see through the partisan haze. Referring to me as lost and occultist is the dead giveaway that you're truly unable to discuss in dialogue on a critical level as you and I used to do so many years ago. You have defaulted to party rhetoric and blasé, inane leftist isms rather than dig below the surface of the talking points that come along with their free side package of insults that you can sprinkle on those who would offer up a differing opinion. I live in a world that is completely infused with mystery and unanswered questions, from spirituality to metaphysics to politics, and probably a whole host of different things to fill in the gaps in between. For me to look at the four faces you added to this post and casually accept that they must have seen the light of the lies that they were living with Trump is far too cut and clean and decisive. One does not simply walk into Mordor. I thought that was an appropriate quote for right there. One does not simply walk into Mordor, abandoning firmly held and fought for beliefs without there being some mystery that has not been revealed to the public. I do not buy at face value that 4 of 19 people with lawsuits hanging over their heads simply said, whew, glad that farce is over. I can now roll over and tell the truth. There's so much more to this, just as there is so much more than has been uncovered regarding the last election, Biden's corruption, Hillary's 56 suicidal friends. Remember yesterday's conspiracy? It's just the basis for today's new legislation. And while I'm not some wild-eyed kook shouting conspiracy with a worn copy of Catcher in the Rye in my back pocket, I do believe there is more than meets the eye to all of this bullshit. Politics is an evil taskmaster, and I'd rather be a little lost by some people's perceptions, than unwittingly wearing the party bit in my mouth and ring in my nose. Again, I'm all up for good debate and great dialogue, but if you come in believing I am some uneducated dope, you'll find me much more resistant to any otherwise teachable moment. I'm pretty grounded in reality, even if I do say so myself. And then I added this quote at the end from Emily McDowell. Finding yourself, and I only grabbed it because it's talking about being lost. I said, finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You're also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you really are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself. An unlearning, an excavation, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. I'm not lost. I think my friend is a little bit. All you have to do is find yourself. Because you're not really lost. You're just buried in old stuff. John Piper says, ouch, what words? Ooh, I hope I didn't come across too caustic to my buddy. I wasn't trying to be caustic with him. I wanted to be straightforward with him. And especially after we've had a few years of this, well, ever really since Trump got into office in 2016, 2017, there's been this kind of thing growing and growing and growing. And you know me, like I said, it takes a lot to offend me. And I don't get offended easily because I don't appropriate it. But there are insults that I look at and I go, really, you idiot. Do you think that I'm just going to sit here while you insult me? You're not getting to my heart and my core, but you've gotten to my brain and my mind, and I'm going to respond to you now. So, no, not all of us need to learn to live in the space of a question. Very good, John. I agree. Return game is weak when you have to resort to ad hominem replies, says Michelle Cannon-Free. Absolutely, 100%. And I said that throughout to his friends. I said, look, I'm here for good dialogue, good conversation. And I said, I'm getting an awful lot of ad hominem. I said, if I say you're attacking me, you'll all go, oh, now he's claiming we're attacking him. So I don't say that. But I do house in there. I say, look, if you're going to, in your conversation, find ways to be diminutive or belittling or attacking or whatever you want to call it, I said, you've lost the high ground of a teachable moment. I said, if you think that there is something I should learn, you're not going to get it by doing that. So maybe that's something for us all to think of as we continue on. Michelle says, in my opinion, many are becoming unglued and unhinged. I agree with you. 100%. Matthew Sainsbury says, yeah, America has gotten divided these days. But now with this, the Israeli war mess, it's now becoming worldwide. Yeah. And I put out a little thing today. You may have seen it. I think I only put it, I don't know if I put it on my Facebook, but I did put it on my Instagram. I've got these little things I do for the record. It's got an American flag down the one side, and it's called For the Record. And I put little tidbits of things up. And I said, as a response to the rampant anti-Semitism rising in this country, the Biden administration just unveiled its creation of a new U.S. strategy focusing on the problem of Islamophobia. Now, a good friend of this show said to me today, he responded to that, and he said, well, they've been planning this for a few years, several months, that is. And I said, yeah, but their timing is lousy, isn't it? So this was the Biden administration's response to FBI Director Christopher Wray testifying that it was Jewish anti-American, or I'm anti, where'd I get that? That it was Jewish Americans facing disproportionate religious bias hate crimes in the wake of murderous attacks in Israel by Hamas. And so what does the Biden administration do in such a timely way? They say, we're going to shore up our U.S. strategy that focuses on Islamophobia. Well, there you go. Think for yourself, folks. I always end these, think for yourself. Come on. I'm not the only one who uses the come on. So if you hear that out there from other guys, specifically if you like him, Joe Pags has got a great talk show. I don't get to hear him much because he's at the end of the business days, like 5 p.m. here. And we're off doing other things. I catch him every now and then. But he does his things on Instagram. It's little 1 to 2 minute blurbs. And he always ends it with, come on, or come on, man, which was a Bidenism. And, or he'll end it with, he'll say something about Biden. And I said this to my friend today. I said, in talking about the Biden administration, I said, oh, just keep in mind, 86 million votes. And I know he was telling me I was lost because he brought up the whole thing about, well, Trump, never conceded. Hillary Clinton at least conceded. I said, that tells you something. She believed she lost. She knew she lost. And I said, but she hasn't shut up about it, has she? I said, Trump didn't believe he lost. I said, so that's where he told me you're lost. So, well, there you go. And that was my response to that. Let's move on. Oh, wait. Steph says over in the chat room, can you imagine if someone did to African Americans what they're now doing to the Jews, even in this country? The protests against them? I'm telling you what. Spot on, Steph. Michelle says the cognitive dissonance runs so deep there can never be any teachable moments. That, my dear, is the truth. Hey, Claudette, good to have you. Welcome to the chat room. And everybody else that has slipped in, let's talk about the topic at hand. This is a big topic. We've talked about this. We've hinted at it before. We've kind of talked about it before, but not formally. What would you do, especially with all of this stuff going on right now about UFO disclosure, alien visitation disclosure, and all of this? We've asked the question here, and it's not unique to me or this show, but the question is, would learning that there is life out there in space, coming from another part of the galaxy or interdimensional, I don't know, wherever it would come from, learning that there is extraterrestrial life that was sophisticated enough, superior enough to our technology to visit us. Not just to eat us or to conquer us, but to visit us. Exploration. The things we'd do. And because we certainly wouldn't go out there to try to exploit anybody, would we? But what would happen, do you think, to the world at large, philosophically, religiously, spiritually, scientifically, politically, governmentally, if we found out that there's other life that has the technology to visit us, which means they're probably superior to us, at least in technology. I have heard, and we've talked about this on the show too, Rocky and I, and Audrey, if you're out there listening, we've talked about this all before in the past. There is some talk out there with those that seem to be in the know, and we've mentioned it on this show, even very recently, that there exists some kind of galactic federation. When you think about the Federation from Star Trek, that's all from a science fiction human perspective. There are those that insist that they have met with and spoken with people all the way up to very trustworthy or at least credible government officials that say that federation already exists out there. We just don't know about it yet. We're not part of it. Our world has not been invited in, or if we've been invited in, it's because the world wouldn't accept it right now. Summed up Godwin's law right there. And there it is. You're right. There is something that we've talked about on the show before, and I'll read this to you, and that's the Fermi Paradox. The definition of it. Have you heard of the Fermi or Fermi Paradox? Fermi. The Fermi Paradox is the discrepancy between the lack of conclusive evidence of advanced extraterrestrial life and the apparently high likelihood that it exists. There's that paradox, the Fermi Paradox. That's what they're calling it now. And there's a chain of reasoning that goes behind this. Here's some of the facts and the hypotheses that together serve to highlight the apparent contradiction between these two things. There are billions of stars in the Milky Way system. It was Milky Way similar to our sun. With the high probability, some of these stars have Earth-like planets in a circumstellar habitable zone. 3, many of these stars, and hence their planets, are much older than the sun. And if Earth-like planets are typical, some may have developed intelligent life a very long time ago in comparison to ours. 4, some of these civilizations may have developed interstellar travel, a step humans are investigating just now. Now, they say we can't exceed the speed of light, so we can't get anywhere. What if there's different ways of traveling? We'll just leave that at that. So even at the slow pace of currently envisioned interstellar travel, the Milky Way galaxy could be completely traversed in a few million years. So since many of the sun-like stars are billions of years older than the sun, the Earth should have already been visited by extraterrestrial civilizations, or at least their probes. And the last point is, however, there's no convincing evidence that this has ever happened. We don't know anything about it. So there's all kinds of original questions behind this, but that's the Fermi Paradox. I'll state it one more time. The Fermi Paradox is the discrepancy between the lack of conclusive evidence of advanced extraterrestrial life, that's point 1, the lack of conclusive evidence of advanced extraterrestrial life, and the apparently high likelihood that it exists. That's the paradox, all right? And so there's some things I want to look at for us tonight. I was originally going to go into doing something on Bigfoot tonight, and I was going to talk about some Canadian research that's been going on. If you have not seen it, it is making the, what would you call it? The supernatural news, the Bigfoot news out there. It is making live science news that on their show, and I just happened to see this episode today, they found not just footprints, and they were tracing things. They were tracing things. If you have not seen the show, by the way, Expedition Bigfoot, it's really well done. They aren't just looking for footprints and stuff like that. They come across them. They're using all kinds of technical equipment. They use technical equipment where they showed a side-by-side of LiDAR. You know what LiDAR is? It picks up every little detail and recreates it on your screen in 3D. They've got LiDAR and they've got live camera that were going side by side. And as you're looking at showing down the tunnel of this old mine shaft where they had followed what they thought was something that would have gone in there. And on the live camera, you don't see anything. Except at one point, for one quick split second, you see a little shadow behind the cameraman's. Part of his face is showing off to the side, and you see a shadow move. And he says, now you see that, but there's nothing there. There's boulders there. There's the wall of the, but over on the LiDAR side is mapped out a big figure with the back of his shoulders and a head on top. And he said, this is outstanding. So there's things like that. And they've run across not only footprints, but for one of the first times ever, an incredibly detailed handprint in the wet mud or clay. Something had going up a little slope and had used its hand as it was climbing up. And so they found footprints. They found a perfect handprint that was in a shape like this as it was clawing itself up the side of this. And it's, I have the high ground, Anakin. It's over, says Jason Patrick, adding brilliant content to the show tonight. Thank you, Jason. Anyway, so that is some of the amazing stuff they've picked up. And now they're not just doing castings of footprints and handprints. Now they use LiDAR, a little LiDAR casting system where they take a three-dimensional picture of it, and it pulls out more detail than you could ever imagine. Think down to fingerprints, footprints, things like that. So it's pretty neat. I was going to talk about that stuff tonight, but now we're not. We're going to push that aside. We'll do that next week. Because I want to talk about this. Suppose you woke up tomorrow morning to learn that extraterrestrial life had been discovered. Not just discovered, but encountered and presented to us. What difference would it make if we found that out? What difference would it make to you? Set aside the extreme scenarios of popular science fiction. The truth will probably be a lot more mundane. Not massive spaceships that are flying in, suddenly filling the sky, but instead microorganisms found deep inside an ice-covered moon. Something we've discovered. Or like we're finding on Mars, it seems to look like. Non-random radio signals from distant stars are the ruins of long-dead alien civilizations. You have people totally scouring Mars photographs that NASA has doctored since they were originally found. What does that make you think when you learn just that? But you can see things that look like remnants of civilization. What difference might those discoveries make? Would they strengthen or weaken your faith in God or science or humanity? I know Pope John Paul, back at least 30 years ago, said something about he would be just fine with finding out there was alien life, and it wouldn't shake his faith at all, that he thinks there's room in God's universe for all kinds of things. So they force us to reevaluate the importance of our own lives, our own values, our own projects. In academic philosophy today, an interest in extraterrestrial life is regarded with a lot of suspicion. Oh, that's the nutcase who believes in extraterrestrial life. Now, this is an historical anomaly. In ancient Greece, Epicureans argued that every possible form of life has to occur infinitely many times in an infinite universe. In the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, as modern astronomy demonstrated, our Earth is just another planet, and our sun is just another star. The default hypothesis among informed observers was that the universe is filled with habitable planets, intelligent life. Remember, they used to think that the Earth and our sun were the center of the universe. Well, we found out we're nowhere near the center of the universe. We're not even the center of our own galaxy. So one principal argument for this pluralism that you can state, well, the hypothesis among informed observers was that the universe is filled with habitable planets and intelligent life. But one principal argument for the pluralism was philosophical or theological. God, or nature, does nothing in vain. And therefore, such a vast cosmos could not be home to only one small race of rational beings. What did Carl Sagan say in his fictional book Contact? Many of you may have seen the movie with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey from 20 years ago at least, or more. But she and her dad were looking at the stars when she was a little girl. And she goes, there's a lot out there. The universe seems very big. And her dad said, it's an awful lot of universe. Seems like an awful lot of wasted space if there's nobody else out there. So we know that life has emerged once. And why should it be so monumentous to learn that it's emerged twice? And the reason that finding life elsewhere would radically change our picture of the universe is because at any point in time, humans will have explored only a tiny fraction of our own galaxy, the tiniest, most minute fraction, let alone the whole universe. And if life has emerged only once in that small sampling, then it's possible that life on Earth is unique, right? If that's all we see. We might then use what's called now pronouncing these words together. I've worked on these for weeks since I first read this. Anthropic reasoning. Well, there's a different phrase. I'm going to get to it. That wasn't it. But it's based on that. Anthropic reasoning. We use anthropic reasoning to explain why we inhabit the universe's only inhabited planet. Where else would observers find themselves? It's anthropic reasoning, human reasoning. But suppose we discover that life has emerged twice within our tiny sample of the universe. Once on Earth, then again somewhere else. It would follow that life must have emerged a vast number of times across just this galaxy, of which they're finding there are tens of thousands to millions of galaxies just within telescope sight of this little planet. Not to mention the number of solar systems that would be in this galaxy alone, Milky Way galaxy. And it would follow that if life has emerged at least a vast number of times across the galaxy, that the discovery of independently emerging life would thus teach us that life is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And that discovery could have very significant implications. The restriction to independently emerging life is necessary because the life found on meteors or asteroids or Mars on the moon might have the same origin as life on Earth, which they have found microbial fossils in meteor bits and chunks. That's the stuff that started life here, which contradicts our religions, our spirituality. Maybe the etiology of the beginning of life is our religions. So one perennial set of philosophical questions concerns the nature of values, norms, reasons, and their objective, universal, mind-independent realities. Or are there merely subjective, relative, mind-dependent human constructions? Normative non-naturalists, put those words together, normative non-naturalists claim that there are universal, objective, mind-independent facts about value and reason and norm and morality that aren't specific to any other particular human culture, nor even to human nature in general. And any suitably sophisticated moral agent would perceive the same moral facts and be motivated by them. Thou shalt not kill, let's say. Use that as a moral fact. You don't have to be within a certain philosophical or religious mindset to believe that there's a morality behind that could be pan-cultural. So this strong objectivism is a minority position in contemporary ethics, believe it or not, but one that's gaining respectability. And that's thanks in part to guys like, there's a guy named Thomas Nagel, another one, T.M. Scanlon, the late Derek Parfit, These are philosophers that have helped advance this thinking. And normative non-naturalism combines several distant claims. Moral statements assert facts, and those facts are not reducible to natural facts discovered by science. And some moral statements are true. So when I say that murder is wrong, thou shalt not kill, I claim that murder has the non-natural property of wrongness. And if murder is wrong, then it does possess that property. So the normative non-naturalist position is anomalous within a purely naturalistic worldview that recognizes only the natural facts and properties postulated by science. So secular non-naturalists argue that normative non-naturalism is not as anomalous as it seems, because we already need non-natural facts to explain logic, mathematics, or the normatively inherent in good scientific practice itself. So theists, those who believe in theology, theists argue instead that normative non-naturalism makes much more sense if we already acknowledge a God who transcends the natural world. So either God creates the moral facts along with everything else, or God creates the universe in response to independently existing normative facts. And we're going to talk, we aren't going to get anywhere near accomplishing this all tonight. But if we do, we'll get back to that. So my claim I am making here on this show is that the discovery that life is ubiquitous everywhere would support normative non-naturalism. That this is because if life is ubiquitous everywhere, then we need non-naturalism to explain an otherwise puzzling fact. Given the vast number of potentially inhabited planets in the universe, we would expect at least one extraterrestrial species to have either visited us or transformed the galaxy in ways that were clearly visible, yet we see no one. Where is everybody? This is the Fermi Paradox, named for the physicist Enrico Fermi, who posed that question in 1950. In his book, If the Universe is Teeming with Aliens, Where is Everybody? Stephen Webb lists 75 answers to Fermi's questions. And some are jokes or variations on the theme, but most are distinct solutions that aren't obviously crazy. And I group these into four major categories. One, rarity of life. The specific conditions that make life on Earth possible are incredibly rare, so far as we can tell. Two, rarity of intelligence. Even if life is relatively common, the evolution of intelligent tool-making species, which we kind of talked about when we were talking about animals the other day. I think that was Sunday morning. Intelligent tool-making species requires very specific conditions that are extremely rare to develop that kind of intelligence. Three is Kantian, from Kant or cannot, the contraction of cannot. Kantian. Even if intelligent tool-making species are relatively common, a feasibility barrier prevents the emergence of starfaring civilizations. A feasibility barrier, the Kant barrier. Promising species inevitably destroy themselves or encounter resource constraints before they can conquer the stars. Then the fourth one is Wontonian, from Wontonian you could call it. Won't or will not, that contraction. Even if intelligent tool-making species are relatively common, a motivational barrier prevents the emergence of starfaring civilizations. Every intelligent species who could conquer the stars chooses not to. So there's either the can't or the won't, or those last two. So, drawing on all kinds of anecdotal evidence, Webb suggests that physicists, impressed by the vastness of the universe, typically assume that life is ubiquitous and therefore favor Kantian or Wondtian solutions. Meanwhile, biological scientists, impressed by the complexity of life, typically prefer solutions based on the rarity of life or of intelligent life, intelligent tool-making life. So the discovery that life is ubiquitous would obviously rule out any explanation at all based on the rarity of life. And if we found evidence of intelligent life elsewhere, we'd be forced to conclude that intelligence was not rare either. And of course, if we discovered life elsewhere, then in one sense, the Fermi paradox would simply be dissolved. There's no need to explain why we see no evidence of life elsewhere once we do see it. But if the deeper puzzle would remain, if life is ubiquitous, why don't we see much more evidence of alien civilizations now? We must still explain that the astrophysicist and the science fiction writer David Brin in 1983 called the Great Silence. This is what he called it. That's the Great Silence. If it exists, why don't we see it? Why don't we experience it? So by ruling out rarity-based solutions, the discovery that life is ubiquitous thereby raises the probability of other credible solutions, especially Kantianism and Wondtianism. And so in so doing, it also supports normative non-naturalism. So even if some species eschew visibility, why should we expect every intelligent species to do so? There's those questions. Why would intelligent species choose not to make themselves visible? We can come up with all kinds of flippant answers for that. Well, they don't want to, they see what we're doing and they don't want to have any part of us. Like we're getting their TV reruns? Ask JP. Yeah, something like that, maybe. JP says, my tinfoil hat's going back in the drawer. There you go. That's what you're here for. So, why would intelligent species choose not to make themselves visible? Webb lists 25 distinct Wondtian, I keep wanting to say want, W-O-N-T, Wondtian, the won'ts solutions that have been seriously defended. And here are some of them. Advanced extraterrestrials keep us isolated in an intergalactic zoo as subjects of laboratory experiments. Or because any inhabited planet is a non-renewable source of information. Extraterrestrial environments are either not interested in colonizing or transforming the galaxy. Or else they believe that this would be wrong. Cautious aliens are hiding because they fear that the universe is silent, because some genocidal species destroys anyone who becomes visible. And by the way, while these sound goofy because we haven't experienced extraterrestrial contact, they're legitimate questions. Extraterrestrials are post-biological machines with no interest in stars, planets, biological life, or communicating with us. Aliens have passed through the singularity and disappeared into black holes, transcended to a higher dimension, created a new universe, or migrated to a virtual reality, or Valhalla. Advanced aliens congregate around black holes where energy is most abundant, or in the cold outer reaches of the galaxy, where computational processing is most efficient, and so on. So, any Wondtian solution faces one obvious objection. One non-Wondtian species, or even one maverick group of individuals, could do things that would be clearly visible for a very long time. So to solve the Fermi paradox, Wondtian motivations must be universal, not merely widespread or kind of widespread. They have to be universal. But surely that degree of uniformity is simply downright implausible. So even if some species or individuals eschew visibility, why should we expect every intelligent species to do the same thing? Because it's not like they all know each other, or I don't know, maybe they do. There's a galactic federation. I don't know, maybe they're all like us. They all think they're the only ones there. Why would they eschew visibility? Why would we eschew visibility on this planet? Why wouldn't every intelligent species do so? Wontonians are open to an accusation of anthropomorphism or parochial Catholic school parochial. I can't even say it. Parochialism, parochial schools, parochialism. Boom. So let me start that sentence again. Wontonians are open to an accusation of anthropomorphism or parochialism. They're projecting their own individual preferences onto all intelligent beings. So, of course, Kantianism faces a parallel objection. Even if most intelligent tool-using species face a feasibility constraint, why should we believe they do? They all do. Kantians have to defend a universal feasibility barrier. And that natural universality seems as suspect as the Wontonians' motivational one. So isn't it more likely that sooner or later, one lucky species will have sufficient time and resources to escape the feasibility constraint? If Wontonians can dissolve their parochialism and their objection, their parochial objection, let's put it that way, that will give them a significant advantage over Kantians. And guess what, folks? We're about 40 minutes into 3 hours worth of information here, and we've got 6 minutes left with the radio audience. So we might pick some of this up, but we'll have conversation coming from all of you. Parochial. Adriana, thank you. Parochial school. I heard it my whole life. Parochial school. It's where the word is, parochial. All right. So Wontonians need universal motivations that are not specific to species or individuals. And this is where normative non-naturalism comes in. Armed with non-naturalism, Wontonians can argue as follows. Objective values are built into the fabric of the universe. The discovery of those values is essential if one is to understand the universe sufficiently well enough to manipulate it successfully on a large and lasting scale. And that discovery transforms any rational being's motivations. Aliens smart enough to conquer the stars will inevitably abandon their previous plans and follow those universal values. So do you think for a moment, if here on Earth a Star Trek world existed, that we wouldn't almost abandon all else in quest for what's out there? Not meaning we still have to grow crops and feed our people and all of that, But there's the question. So I call this solution to the Fermi Paradox Kantian wantonism. Kantian wantonism. I keep thinking wanton, W-O-N-T-O-N, when I look at my own word. Wontianism. So Kantian wantonism. Because the idea that knowledge of universal values is intrinsically motivating for all rational beings, and it's associated with the 19th century Prussian philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant, K-A-N-T. One can be a Kantian in this sense without endorsing any other details of Kant's philosophy. So, in particular, Kant himself was not a normative non-naturalist. Although it's very controversial, this strange view might be our best solution to the Fermi Paradox, especially if we discover life somewhere else that's as advanced as ours, if not more advanced. Yeah, it would be amazing, Claudette. Wantians need normative facts that reliably motivate all suitably intelligent beings. So whatever their biological species, this rules out normative naturalism, where normative facts are reducible to natural facts. And human ethics is derived from our specific evolved human nature. Alien species might have very different natures, and therefore their moral facts would be quite different from ours. Wontonians can't limit their ontology to natural facts. They need non-natural normative facts that transcend biological differences. So in the contemporary intellectual landscape, this is controversial, but not absurd. Different biology, similar morals. While naturalism is the dominant worldview in analytic philosophy, non-naturalism is becoming increasingly philosophically respectable. We have less than 2 minutes left on the radio. How far do I go? Oh my God, how far can he go? How close can he get to the cutoff point? So there's a strange vision of aliens with radically different evolutionary histories converging on values that humans reject. That's the next point in this. And you know what? This is such a neat topic. I think we're going to spill over into Monday. Unless something wildly absurd happens over the weekend, we're going to pick this up on Monday with the radio show. And for all of those of you listening over on the radio station and listen just audibly to this show, we've got 45 seconds and we're out of here. But we'll pick this up on Monday. So we'll talk about it in the captain's cabin a bit tonight. Talk about everything we've talked about so far. So if you're not over there now, come and join us on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, and click on this show, and we'll talk about this more over there. As for all of you over on the radio, I want to thank you for being here, invite you to be back here on Monday, and we'll talk about this some more. And we'll also be here on Sunday morning for It's Sunday. All of you live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Captain's Cabin. Thanks for being here for the show. Thanks for being here for the after show tonight. We can talk about this. There is a, do you want to contribute to what we've been talking about on tonight's show? I've got, don't call in and go, that's a great show, but I got something totally different I want to talk about. Maybe. It'll all depend on what it is. But here's the link. If you want to add to this or talk about this or talk about anything we talk about from this point on, you're welcome to. And so, by the way, Matthew, you said something about there was that family that saw something come down. The police saw it come down too. And it was captured on film, and that has not been discredited or debunked. But they saw 10-foot beings. And then all of a sudden, all the neighbors who saw this stuff and took films of these beings, all their footage is not available, has not gone viral. Why? Well, there is something, it's all been confiscated. So it's an interesting topic because there's something about that particular event that rings very true. Hey, we got Delaney Pearl Jones, just called it Delaney. How you doing?
Hi. I'm doing pretty good.
Right on.
How are you?
I'm good. What's going on tonight?
Well, you were talking about contact with aliens and stuff.
Yes.
Oh, God. One day, a couple of years ago, I had gotten, someone purchased some of my Scully buddies, right? And I had $100. I was walking down the street past this old hotel that was actually, it was saved. They were going to tear it down. It's a part of Janesville history. And it has the chevron signs of the Star Trek signs.
Oh, yeah,
yeah. And then on top of the building around it, it kind of looks like the old Ghostbusters hotel apartment.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was insignias on it. And I was filming it and talking about how it looked like the Ghostbusters building. And there's this weird guy that came up. I seen him out of the corner of my eye, and he did not look human. I swear to God, he was disguised.
Well, I've seen a few guys that don't look human. But
these things test people, okay?
Okay.
With generosity and how you treat other people. Okay.
Well, now, what's interesting, I've also heard the same thing, and I've told a story about angels will do that. But now there's all this talk that, and I even wrote about this, I'm not dismissing the reality of angels or devils or demons or anything like that. One of the possibilities they've said is that our misinterpretation of spirits or of alien entities is that they were angels and devils and demons and gods and all of those things.
Yeah.
Down through the ages. So anyway, you were saying about this guy.
Yeah, so he comes up and asks me, he's like, excuse me. He's like, I'm sorry to bother you. I actually have the video on Instagram and you can hear him talking. Well, I was zooming in on the insignia of the hotel. It had an 11-pointed star and the triangle mark like I have on my cane that I had.
Yes.
Well, he said, I'm sorry. He's like, me and my son are homeless and we're trying to get a hotel room and we're $15 short.
Yeah, we're 15 billion light years from home and we have nowhere to go.
Right. It was so weird. Well, I gave him $7. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave him $7. Okay. Just $7. Not anymore. Not $7. So 3 weeks later, I'm looking on Instagram and Facebook and there's a doggone crop circle that was almost the exact marking of, it was a mesh between the hotel, the big 11-pointed star and the chevron insignia on the front of the hotel and up on the side of the hotel. It was that put together in a giant crop circle in the UK.
Oh,
3 weeks later. I got videos and pictures of it. And the whole experience, it was crazy.
That is crazy.
I've tried to deny these experiences, but also I was doing a video years ago and I felt something. I could feel it, right?
What?
Well, I happened to catch a little gray man. He keeps saying his name is Lamb from Aleister Crowley's buddy. And I got a picture of him directly over my head. You can see the face of the alien guy, and then you can literally Aleister Crowley's face. Yeah, I got pictures of it. If you want me to send it to you,
yeah, I'd like to
I
see
can.
that. Well,
Everything's on Instagram and Facebook.
And why is it we always want to deny this stuff? Our first reaction to anything is that the fight or flight evolutionary thing involved with this. The first reaction we have to anything, ghosts, aliens, spirits, whatever, is no, it's got to be something else.
We've been programmed to deny the supernatural.
Yes. Hillary's emails. Thanks for putting that. Aliens, angels, and demons are just 3 languages that mean, I'm assuming it's a she, because you're assuming the identity of a female there, that they mean the same thing. Add in jinn or genius and a few others for good measure. That's a good point. It's worth looking at. I know I've done a lot of study on all of those things, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I've been studying since I was little, because I woke up. I really feel they took me for a ride.
Yeah.
And they didn't put me back in the house. They left me on the front porch, and I had to knock to get in, and my grandma was pissed.
Thanks for taking me for a ride and leaving me on the front porch.
Right, I was only like 8, and my grandma was mad because I was knocking on the door.
It's like they took you out for a drinking binge, and they just, that's his front yard. Just drop him in the yard.
My grandma was so mad at me. I'm like, Medea, they took me. She's like,
Wow.
they probably did, but I don't know why they didn't bring you back inside. I said it was a joke to piss you off because they messed with you too.
Nice. I'm just going to say now, aliens, if you're going to abduct me, please bring me back inside.
Yeah.
So it's all interesting stuff. And I know for many of us, all this stuff lies on, it's the outliers of our existence. We don't experience these things for the most part. Other people do. And we hear their accounts, and that's as close as we ever get to it. But there is that Fermi Paradox. And what do you do with that, by the way, Delaney? The fact that there is seemingly all this life that surrounds us out there, but we've never seen any of it. It never visits us, except the rare few that we write off as crackpots.
Well, they've been visiting me since I was born dead. So I've had experience with all these things my whole life. I just tried to deny it and run from it. But you can't, because there's a connection there, you know.
Sure.
And then come to find out, I got Zulu reptilian blood in me. So
what did Jason say? The aliens are all tuned into season 23 of Earth, eating their space popcorn like they're watching Jersey Shore. There you go.
Exactly.
That's got to be it, Jason. That's got to be it. So that's interesting. Oh, hey, we got Matthew Sainsbury is called in. Let's bring him up too. Hey, Matthew, in Barbados.
Hi,
Captain Barbados. How you doing tonight?
Okay, Scotty. Yeah, hi. Good night, Delaney. I'm very glad that you commented on my remark about those 10-foot tall entities that they were talking about in Nevada area in Las Vegas, you know, because I heard about it on the news, and then I checked it on YouTube, and they did catch something that wasn't human, that had a high, a high stature. I saw on YouTube. They say it wasn't made. I believe this is a real camera footage, or so. That's what they said. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
there's
a lot more going on up there.
I've seen some still photos taken from that, and I've seen some of the video. And the police are on record as saying that this happened, and they filmed it on their car cams or their body cams, picked it up. So
yeah, because I remember when it was when Uncle Dave was on your show one day, I was telling him about this object that fell from the sky in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, that shaped like an acorn, and it had mysterious writings on it, and everybody tried to decipher it, but the language was not known to man, you know. Yeah, that was another incident too. And then the government came and actually quarantined the site and covered it up, and then rode off into the sunset with it. And to this day, we don't know what they did with it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
they cover
crazy.
up this stuff.
Jason, by the way, Jason Patrick out there, I think you should call in, brother. I want to hear you expound a bit on some things and talk to us a bit. Tell us what you know. Kalina 2006 in the chat room. Everyone is tuned in as children, but the older we get, we learn to be skeptical of things we can't understand. That's the
Yeah.
truth. That's the truth. Some of us never lose our skepticism. All of what I do now is because I was curious as a kid and I wanted to know more. And now I'm probably more skeptical now than I was when a kid. Obviously, I agree with you. Kalina. Is it Kalina? Kalina? You say Kalina, I say Kalina. But I agree with you. Jason, all of this is moot, Scotty, as it is not written in the original Klingon. Kapla! That's right.
That's right.
Do you all remember that? And any of you ever watched the show when it was on Frasier with, oh God, what the hell is his name?
Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer. Did you ever watch Frasier? There was one episode of his show where he was supposed to do a reading at a bar mitzvah. And he didn't know Jewish. And so some kid gave him the Jewish script to read. And he said, I've typed this all out phonetically for you. And so he gets into the bar mitzvah and he starts reading. This kid was playing a trick on him. It was actually, he didn't give him Jewish words. He gave him Klingon. So he's up there in his bar mitzvah in the synagogue reading Kapla, Tuk, Tuk, Pakwo, and in Klingon. And it was it was a great series.
He read it so passionately.
John Piper, here is how you call in. I'm going to paste this link right here. I don't know if it's clickable in the chat room, but at least copy that and paste it into your browser, and it'll bring you right in here. So that's the way to get in. Kalina says Kalina. What syllable is the emphasis on? Kalina. You say it fast like that, Kalina? Or is it Kalina or Kalina? Klingon. Kalina.
Yeah.
I hope you're rolling with us. I'm just it's Adriana. Oh, hey, Adriana. How you doing? Let's see. Elderberry said he did his son's bar mitzvah and Lowell taught him the Klingon. Nice. That's funny. So, I did, by the way, whoever said it, that Frasier's they're coming back with a new Frasier series. I did see a little trailer, like a 30-second trailer for it. Crossed over and I went, oh, that's interesting. I didn't watch the show with regularity. I caught it regularly enough that I understood who was who. I liked his brother. Who was his brother? Was his brother Nigel?
Niall.
I like that actor because he talks like this. He was in, if you remember, Hellboy.
Yeah.
He played Abe Simeon.
Yep.
And I don't know if he was in the costume or if he just voiced him. So Niles, there it is.
That's
Roger Rabbit says, cool. Yeah, I liked him. He was also voiced a character in the animated Treasure Planet. Because you can't miss his voice.
Watch that.
Yes, he was the doctor, whatever his name was, who, Hawkins gave him the map and he had that thing going. So you can't miss his voice. So, so there you go, John and Jason, I've sent you the link and you can call in anytime you want. So, let me ask you two. Oh, go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah. There's an interesting comment that Ron Reagan said that United Nations and maybe a lot of people should think about it. He did say, though, that if this planet was invaded by a hostile force, we would put aside all our differences and realize that we're one family on this planet. That's something very remarkable he said, though.
Wasn't there something he also said when he was was it Reykjavik or another place where he was doing talks with Gorbachev, and they were at an impasse on something, and he said to Gorbachev, he says, "Let's go take a walk," and they took a walk together away from the microphones and away from all the people. They, of course, had security with them, and one of the security said something about how Reagan had brought that up again. He said to Gorbachev something about, we're at this impasse, but what if we were to face aliens and we were at this impasse, and so on. So it's very interesting. Here is John Piper himself calling it. John, how you doing, sir?
Not so bad. Hello, everybody.
All right, good to see you, brother.
Been a while.
Yeah.
So, recovering from all the surgeries, I'll be just fine.
Yes. And by the way, folks, I originally met John at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival.
Oh, my God.
Years and years ago.
Yeah, it's almost 20 years now.
If not more. Well, let's see. It's been 17 since I was there.
Yeah.
So,
with that.
More than that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes. He had rapier wit and a rapier with him. Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. My thing is, like, you get talking here, and it's like, what's really interesting is how the Vatican, as a Catholic and as a semi-theologian here, there's actually Vatican position papers written out. There's actually a book called "Would You Baptize an Alien?" or "Baptize." Would you baptize an extraterrestrial? And it's written by the Vatican Observatory's head astronomer.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Well, let me ask you, since we have you here from the Vatican, let me ask you. There's all this talk and scuttlebutt about the Vatican has all this earthly knowledge. They are like the more advanced version of what the Library of Alexandria would have been in its day.
Oh, the secret library?
The secret libraries. Do you think the Vatican knows whether or not there's alien life already?
I think so. I just think it's buried so deep in my library card there is kind of out. It's expired,
yeah.
But they've got there's rumors about them having artifacts of saints that some of the saints were aliens. Pretty nuts type stuff that's apocryphal.
Wow.
But it's more like on the whispering part of the that stuff. So it gets like maybe there's bodies at the Vatican, maybe not.
Maybe not.
The whole idea of that.
They're not at Area 51. They're in the Vatican.
No. But what's the other thing that we're going to talk about? The theology of the Saint John, that's just Saint Pope John Paul now II. What he was postulating was, well, if there are aliens and they are in communication with people, then they are reaching out as God's children as well, because anything in this world that has either, we believe in the spiritual and the non-corporeal stuff, as well as the physical entities. So they're created beings, they're creatures of God. The question is, would they be baptized or would they need to be baptized? And the question is, was Earth the only place that ever experienced original sin?
Right.
As that was postulated by C.S. Lewis.
I've heard that, and I've had those conversations, those theological conversations. If there's alien life, would that then mean that we are the only planet or the only species that fell out of favor with God? Or are there other gods for other galaxies? This is the kind of thing that
the greater plurality thing.
Well, you see, my position is that, well, there's one God who is outside of time and space, who, because of her being, existed in a begotten way, is that there is the love is what it is. For God so loved the world, in God's consciousness,
Okay,
and
you're
that
right
is
about that.
where it's at. It's all about the love business.
Yes.
And then there's the issue about the reptilians actually having been the snake in the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Ooh,
I've heard all of this stuff before, and you don't know. That's the thing. You just want somebody to come down and go, all these books over here.
Yeah,
Don't read this. Those are dumb. This is what's real. So
yeah.
That's the hard thing to try to balance. And I should have a theological talk with you sometime, because you know how I have expressed things on this show. It just seems to me that, and I'm not being blasphemous, and I'm not trying to step out of bounds with God, or by any means try to psychoanalyze God. That's not my place. But it would seem to me that there's so many things that feel missing, that God could have been a little clearer about that.
And answer questions.
Especially if it comes to salvific nature, eternal destiny, things like that.
Yep.
God, you could have been a little clearer, so people don't have to, well, I think I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So, and it all ties in. All this stuff all folds into all of it. So,
Because some people think that Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, actually witnessed a UFO. In Ezekiel chapter 1, there's this wheel within a wheel that he talks about. And
right,
a lot
the
of
wheel
things
within a
that
wheel
sound
within a
like a
wheel
modern
within a wheel
UFO.
within a wheel. Yeah, and I've torn that apart. We've done a show on that, as a matter of fact, a while back, talking about Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. And so there's interesting stuff to examine. All kinds of things in the Bible that seem to speak to alien life, if you look through the... So, and who knows? Who knows for sure? Well, somebody does.
Yeah.
So,
I get a kick out of this show. What's it called? Ancient Aliens?
Oh, yeah.
Here's Fra Angelico has painted a craft in the back of the of his picture of the Annunciation. It's like,
yeah, the little globe thing he's flying around. Yep.
So it's like, hello, or
yeah.
Well, the whole thing, like, Christ was possibly an alien too. So, like, at that point, I'm like, well, that's wrong, because that denies the
that's right. He's Christ was to be the one of us,
right?
And if he's an alien, he's not one of us,
right?
So, and the Bible went to great pains through the Old Testament to delineate who was one of us and who wasn't, what bloodlines were, what bloodlines weren't. So there it is. So
in ancient times, they called flying objects fairy chariots. Today, we would call them something different in our contemporary language.
Right.
UAPs. Yeah.
What do you think, Delaney? Would it cause you, and I'll ask this of everybody, would it cause you any radical change in what you believe about God and the universe? Should we be contacted by extraterrestrial life that was at least technologically superior to us?
Well, we already have been infiltrated. No one is looking at the real fact. 1940, was it Roswell crash?
47, yeah.
47. In all actuality, those beings that actually crashed was an infiltration of the world governments. If you can't see how much things have changed and what's really going on, Reagan was doing a point over there. Look over there, but actually, all the bullshit's going on right here.
Yep.
Get it?
Yep, I do.
All right. So, the Bush plan.
Well, it's like the story I've told on this show about my friend who dated this guy that said he was part of an organization outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, that had a facility that went 30 some stories deep into the ground, and that there were over 150 alien species already here, represented in that facility alone.
Oh, bro.
And it's a cockamamie story, it sounds like.
It sounds
Until-
stranger than fiction, but it's actually realer than reality.
That's it. And there were guys that, and I've mentioned it before, Stanton Friedman, who I had talked to, interviewed him, said this guy knows stuff
Mhm.
that I don't know how else he'd know unless he knew. And, kind of thing, and other people and just other factors all around it. So it's interesting.
Stanton Friedman, was he the one that dug into everything pretty much?
Stanton Friedman, he wrote all the first big books on Roswell,
Okay.
and that's where he got his notoriety in the UFO, the alien UFO field. And he passed away not long ago, but you can look him up, Stanton Friedman.
Yeah.
There's another guy too called Robert Odin too. He's a very good ufologist. He's good at showing parts which are out of place objects in paintings and stuff. And
Cool.
he even shows you a Maya or I think an Aztec, one of these Native American or Indian, South American clay figurines that was made by an Indian. And if you look at it closely, that guy that's carved out of the stone is actually dressed in a space suit. You can see the boots and everything like that. Yeah,
Sure.
from South America.
Claudette mentions in the chat room at Göbekli Tepe, they've found recently pillars with what they consider to be alien-like writing on them. Now, would it be alien writing, or would it just be something that we can't decipher because it's 12,500 years old?
Yeah.
I don't know. And Göbekli Tepe's in Turkey, by the way, Claudette.
Yeah.
That's probably what you meant. You've got Egypt there. It's Turkey. And there's also Karahan Tepe, which is not far from there. Very similar. And these sites date back longer than I know. In very conservative biblical circles, we were taught, when I went to seminary, we were taught that the earth is 6,000 to 7,000 years old.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
That's what
that is theology.
it's
that
the
came
biblical
out of-
dating system, they say.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve, Abraham, if you do all the dating, you go back, you end up with 6,000 to 7,000 years old. Well,
Yeah.
they are finding that the flood probably was a natural part of the flood was the Ice Age, or brought on the Ice Age, or the Ice Age melted, or there was some connectivity there. That there were two global floodings, like 4,000 and 8,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe, they're finding it dates back 12,000 plus years.
Yes.
So if you have a 12,000-year-old site and the Earth is only 6,000 to 8,000 years old, you got something's off somewhere. Well, their dating system is obviously wrong, and dating Göbekli Tepe, I've heard.
Yeah,
I said,
right.
I don't think so. There are those who have thought, people in their fields or scholarly fields, had thought that Göbekli Tepe was part of, because Göbekli Tepe had all been built, all these structures, but then meticulously buried by hand. Not catastrophically buried, it was meticulously buried. And they think, was this because of the flood, the pending flood? Did they know this was coming? Was it because of that they did this? And the other one, not Karahani, it's now in saying that, Elderberry, I forgot what the word was. The Kana, what's the other Tepe? There's Göbekli Tepe and
Châteauvieux is another ancient city.
KH something, Kanara Tepe or something like that. No, I said it right the first time. Now I forgot. Thanks, Elderberry. He threw me off. I thought that's what you meant, Claudette. What did JP have to say? He said, if they have the ability to sneak us out of the house, you know damn well they have the capability of putting people back in the house. Yeah, there you go, Delaney. If they can sneak you out of a house, they can put you right damn back where they got you.
Because they were playing around.
There he
It's
is.
like a joke.
You know,
It was like a
inviting me
joke.
into this chat room is dangerous, right?
Yeah, yes, I do.
I'm gonna derail the conversation. That's just what I do.
Derail it.
Ready?
Oh,
All
Lord.
right, buckled in.
Okay, so what are you wanting me to expound upon?
Well, I'm just curious
Hmm.
because you are as flippant and assholey as I am when it comes to making comments. That I don't know. Are you somebody that do you adhere to a theory that there are or are not aliens? What do you think? What's your wheelhouse tell you?
My wheelhouse tells me that, well, it tells me a number of different things. Which one I should listen to on a given day is questionable.
I've been there.
One part of me says, and it's the Catholic in me, right? That that there is a certain thing about being that unique creation. But then when you start looking at the science side of things, and I would say the more educated you become in various topics, not just, focusing only in theology or focusing only in science or whatever, as your knowledge base expands, and if you're a thinking person,
Yeah.
Yes.
for me, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, look, how big is our galaxy? How big is the universe?
Big.
Right. Let's look at these things with millions upon millions upon millions of stars. More stars than there are grains of sand on the beach. How can you tell me that there is not a statistical chance of there being life out there?
Yeah.
Now, why they haven't come here, we could go into your Kantian and Wontian,
Yes, Wontian.
Wontian, stuff, all we want, for why they haven't been here or why we don't know they've been here. I mean, heck, for all we know, if we want to get really nerdy with it, prime directive, man.
Yeah.
Prime directive. But then again, like I said earlier, all this stuff is moot because it's not written in the original Klingon. But who knows why they haven't come here? Here's what I kind of wonder: is it's like, if you're seeing all of these things, why not just say something? If the government has all of the things, various multiple governments have footage from FLIR and things like that on aircraft.
I think we have, and I think there's been all kinds of evidence, just always thrown off as this guy's bunch of doo-doo.
Right, and it's understandable because it is very fantastical. It's a broad, big idea, and you can't wrap your head around it almost. No. We live and exist in our own little microcosm, and we are so easily just set into working with the blinders on mode that when you start bringing those things from outside that are bigger than what we think about in our normal, everyday lives, you stumble into that thing of cognitive dissonance.
Sure.
You have all of the evidence in the world to refute everything that you feel or think or whatever, but because you're so stuck in it, you can't wrap your brain around it, and you can't accept new evidence and change your standpoint, or be open to changing your standpoint.
I get that.
Yeah. So I'm a little deeper than flipping ideas, I guess.
Yeah. And now and then. Yeah. Your prime directive thing got me, though. That was the clincher. So there was something you mentioned that I wanted to comment on. Now it's has slipped away from my mind. But I tend to think with all of this that there is something there that we certainly can acknowledge. There's a lot of buffoonery out there. There's a lot of weird accounts of things out there, but I think there's also real accounts of things out there.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's very possible that we have already been contacted by other species out there, but it has gone through governmental heads of state that or committees or whoever sets themselves up. Do you think for a minute that if aliens landed and wanted to meet our president, and they'll make no Biden jokes here or Reagan jokes or anything, but if they
I do
wanted
not
to meet
recall.
the leader of our country, do you think there would not be people already in place that would either prevent that from happening or be part of that happening or be part of this is why this cannot be released to the public? I think that may have been done already. Maybe I'm not being very clear because I'm just babbling about it, but I think bottom line, we've already been contacted. We already know these species exist. Some people know for sure all the ins and outs of this, but it's not being revealed to the general public. And that there's a reason for that. I think if Homeland Security, such as it is, can keep secrets on terrorist groups within our country, can they keep secrets on alien groups? I don't know. Maybe it's not a good comparison. But I think we just don't know everything, and we're not being told everything.
No.
And I think the only way it's going to get out is if normal people let it out, which they do. But it would take something. Yeah, something's crackling. Not sure what that is.
Yeah, somebody typing?
Is that cooking or crackling?
I think somebody's typing.
I came off of mute. I'm gonna go, y'all.
Oh, okay.
Okay, see you, Delaney. Thanks for being here.
Y'all.
Bye.
Love you.
Later. Love you too.
Okay.
It's probably actually it's probably my NSA guy and my FBI guy who are listening in on my Amazon Echo dots. So
yeah, something's going on. I muted Captain Barbados. It's not him.
Mm-mm.
Well, we'll figure it out. It'll either go away. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's like in what was the movie with Mel Gibson and his kids and the aliens in the field?
Oh, Signs.
Oh,
Signs. He
Signs,
holds up the baby monitor.
that was Mel Gibson.
Swing away.
Swing away home.
So, yeah.
That was a good movie.
It was a good
I
movie.
have it on DVD. Yeah,
I enjoyed that movie.
The water is the one of the things that the aliens couldn't stand at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what?
Jacqueline Phoenix, the guy that playing Gladiator, he had I think he had glasses of water there, and he used his baseball bat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good film.
Fun, man.
What I want to know is look, why don't we just say, hey, come on down, and then we can start filming new episodes of Alien Nation.
There it is.
It's a great series. Let's just make it a reality show.
A reality show, exactly. I don't know. If they exist. And again, that goes into the Fermi narrative or the Fermi Paradox.
Yeah.
If they're here and there's so many of them and they are alive, where are they? And that's the big question.
I'm still kind of
if
locked
they
on
are
the-
here and go ahead, John. What?
I'm kind of locked on the whole reality TV show. Suddenly going like the Housewives of Beta Reticuli. You know, it's like, oh,
yeah, there it is.
Well, you know, I was cruising down the mean streets of Grand Forks, North Dakota here, and tell you what, I saw some guys with some crazy looking motorcycles with some crazy looking, almost like Pharaoh looking helmets.
Yeah.
Some guy said something about, hey, Starbuck, I don't, there's a store, whatever. I didn't.
Nice. Well, I don't know. All of you else, everybody else out there, what do you think? What would you do? Would it change your paradigm? Would it rock your world? Would it change your philosophy? Would it radicalize the way you think? Or would you be pretty much the same? I think I'd be pretty much the same because with obvious obvious differences. If you know they exist, that's like, now this is a negative, but I know terrorists exist, but I've
Yeah.
never had to deal with them one-on-one.
Right.
It'd be the same thing with aliens. I think I know they exist. I don't ever have to deal with them on one-on-one. Never had a conversation with one that I know of.
Yeah.
So, it could be like Delaney's
Yeah,
story.
ghosts seem to be very real, so there's a
Yes.
lot of other stuff out there.
Yeah. So there it is.
Indeed. Yeah, that's an interesting kind of conundrum there. How would anything change? I can tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Aliens showed up, I'd be looking really, really hard at Verizon, being like, if these guys can go across the galaxy, we put a man on the moon in 1969. You're telling me I can't get 5 bars in my house?
That's
No.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why we aren't crossing the galaxy right now, because we can't get 5 bars in our house.
Exactly what it is.
So anyway,
here all weekend, folks.
yes, keep your waiter. So anyway, I'm running out of material. Not that we couldn't just talk like this forever. I'm not hosting very well because I don't know where to take this right now without just launching into something much deeper. So I'm going to save that for probably Monday night. And I think we're going to start wrapping up tonight, unless any of you guys has anything more you want to add to this. Or if anybody wants to call in out there, you can call in. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap up and pick it up another night when there's more meaty material that I'm going to present.
Well, it's interesting. For one thing, it's like dealing with a religious reality, which we as Christians don't have evidence so much of the resurrection, but we still believe.
Still believe.
Yeah.
And so it's
Because there's a verse in Mark chapter 16 where it closes by saying that they said nothing to no man after they heard that Jesus was risen from the dead before they were afraid, as a full stop. And then some commentators say that there are 8 verses that are added to Mark's gospel that wasn't actually there. I've heard that on some documentaries that talked about when it comes to the resurrection.
Well, it wasn't there in some of the earliest texts that we have. So.
Well, and that's interesting when you start looking at that kind of stuff, because the translation of the Bible is an interesting thing. And when you look at like the Hebrew language and how that is formulated and how a lot of things are said in context, there's also, pronunciation and different things that if you pronounce it one way, it means this. If you pronounce it another way, it means something else. The definition changes. And so when you start looking at, how many iterations now have we been through since the Council of Nicaea, where they first put everything together, to Johann Gutenberg being like, hey, I got this thing, and it can put words on paper, right? And so how many revisions has this gone through? How many retellings? How many influences from the societal norms of the day?
I think even on that point, I think there are some things we can be somewhat more sure of, because we got like what is the oldest manuscript of the Gospel of John that we have? It dates back to within 100 years of John's life. So you're talking into the late 200s AD. John lived to about 100 AD, they think. And so we've got some manuscripts that'll date back that far. You've got your Codex A and Codex B manuscripts. You've got all the Hebrew manuscripts. You got all this stuff. You've got what is it? The Septuagint. We don't have the original Septuagint, but the Septuagint was written in the 400s thereabouts BC as a reconstruction of the Old Testament. And It was in the Library of Alexandria that they did that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got those
There's some
texts.
changes to the Hebrew
Basically,
too.
the Old Testament you see today in a Catholic Bible or a Old Testament you're going to see is taken from the Septuagint. And
Right.
so there are manuscripts that date back. But there are definitely other manuscripts that have been rewritten.
Right.
Yeah.
So
True.
I think, and Dead Sea Scrolls, you're talking first century.
Oh yeah, the Isaiah scrolls, they're big.
First century BC, I believe.
Well, and then let's look at another thing
so-
with this. Not only do we have the revisions that, the more modern, I use that very loosely, revisions. Before all of this stuff was written down, and we're talking, let's go back, Old Testament, right?
Mhm.
BC period.
Right. All of this stuff, before it was ever written down, it was handed down through oral tradition.
Right.
And oral tradition it's like playing, you ever as a kid play the game telephone?
Yeah.
Where you sat in a circle of friends and then you tell them, Billy
That's
has a big nose.
age-old argument on this. Yeah. Is
Right.
the game of telephone.
And it's gone through so many iterations before it gets to the final person who tells the story to whoever's writing it down. Little things changed, and it's so, that's
brewing coffee over there or something.
I actually am brewing coffee,
That
but
might be what we're hearing.
I just started it like well before this kicked back in. I'm telling you, it's my NSA guy. Hey Bob, how are the kids?
Hey Bob, yeah. See, I've gone through when I went to seminary. We went through a bunch of textual criticism courses, and looking at, and I don't remember half of the stuff I learned in that course, but I remember the basics about, first thing you look at when you're trying to read scripture, interpret older texts, is find out who wrote it, what date was it written, to whom was it written, what was the context, and what would the people to whom it was written have understood within their context historically.
Yeah.
It might be something totally different. And,
exactly.
So it's interesting when it comes to all that stuff. It's like the one I like to hail to a lot. And John, I don't know if you heard me on this show talk about this, but one really interesting point that I learned was in the Old Testament was the where it says Moses is in front of the burning bush.
Right.
And he asks, well, whom shall I say sent me?
I am.
And he says, I am that I am. He tells Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you know that is the only place in the Bible where an ancient Mesopotamian wordplay is used in the phraseology? So that's all contextual. And so when you're reading that, first thing to understand is Moses, when he's asking, he's saying, so God, whom shall I say sent me? What's your name? There was a mythos, if you will, about understanding the hidden name of a deity. You would have some power over it.
Yes.
And so Moses, being raised in the school of the Egyptians, where he studied all these world languages, the school of the nobles, he asks the question. He's really, what he's saying, he's kind of looking at God and going, so what's your private name that I can tell people so they know I'm really one of yours?
Yeah,
and then God says, I am that I am. And it's a Mesopotamian wordplay. And the Mesopotamian wordplay, without getting to the breakdown of all the etymology of the language, it literally means I am that Enki they speak of.
Oh.
And I said, wait a minute.
Enki?
And I looked at this phrase and I looked at all the breakdown. Now, we don't know if God is equating himself to Enki and saying he and I are the same thing, or if he's saying, that Enki they speak of, that's really me.
Yeah.
We don't know what the connotation is there, but the context that wordplay would have been understood to say back at the time it was written was that Enki, that's who I am. I am that Enki they speak of. And it was a Dr. David Roll. You may have heard of him in all of his films and movies. Books that he's written. A biblical scholar, an agnostic, but a biblical scholar, nonetheless. And he rooted that all out and wrote about that. And he told me that, as a matter of fact, and I said, you've got to be, it blew my mind, that I am stuff. And then, of course, the context of Moses being one that's saying he's trying to find out the private name of God. And remember, one of the commandments, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for whosoever does this shall not be held guiltless. And that's in the Old English. What that means in context, whoever uses the private name of God for self-fulfilling and vain purposes will not be held guiltless. Well, what do you see all through the life of Moses? At least what he's recorded. The books he wrote, and who other people have added to it, probably Joshua or was some other scribe after Moses was gone. But what is it that, remember the scene, and I've talked about this before, where it says, and Moses pitched his tent outside the camp. And there, God would come and meet with him every day and speak to him face to face as a man speaks to his friend. But then 9 verses later in the same chapter, Moses says, no man shall see God's face and live. So what was the seeming contradiction there in just 9 verses? Moses talked to God face to face as a man talked to his friend, but no man shall ever see God's face and live. Is that a contradiction, or was that Moses in his writing saying, I'm more than a guy? He's bringing with him the tendrils of Egyptian belief. As the leader, I am a god, a brother to the gods, as the Egyptian rulers were. And so he's saying, I'm not just a man, I am a brother to the gods. God talks to me to my face.
So I guess that's a certain level of like cultural hubris.
Maybe.
That was there.
In context, probably historically, very different than a hubris. But then what happens to Moses?
Well, on the part of Moses,
his life, God judges him, does not allow him to enter the promised land after 40 years. What's the reason given? Not because he struck the rock when God told him to speak to the rock. It's because of what he said. He said, must we always, in a sense, save your butts? And God's saying, wait a minute, there is no we here. It's me. You are my messenger. You're my prophet. And so Moses was, what did he suffer? By equating himself with God, he was judged for that and not allowed to go into the promised land. And I think he did that a lot throughout his life, because this is what he brought with him from Egypt. You can't spend 40 years of your productive life in one thing, being trained as a nobleman, being trained as very likely in the pharaonic house, in the school of the pharaohs and the nobles. You can't be trained as and brought up as a prince of Egypt for 40 years and then all of a sudden lose all of that when you're out in the desert. You ran away. It doesn't mean you abandon everything you once thought was true.
Right.
Even though the Bible says that Moses, that he was a man of faith. By faith he did this. By faith he identified with his people. By faith he did that. I think that was a blanket statement for what he was doing. I think Moses identified with his people. And I think he also saw himself in context to the way it's written, he saw himself when he murdered the Egyptian taskmaster and buried him in the sand. I believe he saw himself as being the most unique amongst the Hebrews in the position he held in government, in the royal house in Egypt, that he would have better opportunity than anybody else to be the prophesied deliverer. And when he murdered the Egyptian, he was basically enacting that out. So that's just a thought.
Interesting.
So context. Hey, Chuck Thurston, haven't seen you for a while.
Akhenaten was a pharaoh too that seemed to have had the ability to be like at one with the Aten that he was into, and that he seemed to believe that he was the person that could be the mouthpiece for the Aten in his his belief. But he even wrote a hymn to the Aten, and some people say that Psalm 104, I think it is, or Psalm 103, one of those psalms has an echo to some of the words that Akhenaten wrote about the rising of the Aten, how it brings life to the earth, and the lions come from the den, and so like that. Psalm 103, I think it is. I saw it in documentary.
Oh,
interesting.
Neat. Interesting.
I have kind of long held this idea, spending however many years it was in Catholic school, or as I like to call it, Catholicism. Wow.
Catholicism. Wow.
Yeah.
Cigar here.
And but then looking at other things, having to take cultural courses, having to take courses about religion, post all of that, like in college, when working my history program, I kind of, it's like, what if everybody has a small slice of the pie?
Okay.
In the greater overall picture of life and God or Allah or however you want to refer to the deity and creation and all of these things, what if all of these different cultures, they've got a sliver of the wheel, and you got to actually take all of those pieces from everybody and put it together to really get it figured out.
Puzzle.
Because how many faiths have some sort of flood-like demise of man, and then in a kind of a saving of a small group of humans, right? How many have some sort of messianic kind of theme with an important person in there, whether it is literally Jesus as the Messiah, or if it's we're waiting for the Messiah, or Buddha reaching enlightenment, that becoming almost a some sort of a gray area messianic transformation, that elevation kind of thing. We're all looking at it. We're all looking at the same whatever it is on the floor, but from different points in the room.
Right.
That's probably a much better way to put it next time I ever try to talk about that. It's a lot more efficient.
The Jews.
I don't have one on my shelf.
First century.
What's that?
The Jews in the first century seem to have been looking for a Messiah figure that would be like a militaristic guy to deliver them from Rome. It seemed that way to me, because how Judah Maccabeus was a guy who rose up and defeat the Syrian Greek king Antiochus. And
right.
In fact, Israel became
Simon the Zealot.
Right. Israel became independent after the Maccabean victory. So they were looking for somebody like that.
I wrote about exactly what you're talking about, Jason. I think it's a direct parallel anyway. I think it was in the book on the reptilians. It was chapter 1 or 2, and I was laying the groundwork for something, and I talked about the things that we believe are like entering into one of the old renovated theater houses from a century ago or more. And I was thinking particularly of some of the big old theaters like is it the Orpheum, John, here in the Twin Cities? Or is it the Ordway? Which
The Ordway is the
one-
new one. The Orpheum is the old one.
The Orpheum.
Balcony, yeah.
Orpheum. The State Theater, too, is another one.
Right.
In Detroit, you have the
Say,
Fox Theater.
I thought the Orpheum was on Route 66, but
Wrong Orpheum.
wrong Orpheum.
But I wrote about these old theaters with the old golden proscenium arches and the velvet curtains and all the chandeliers and the velvet seats and all of this from a century gone by.
Right.
And I said, it's like walking into one of those places and you have your seat and you sit in this seat and you view the play from this seat. And the guy next to you has the same perspective of the play as you, basically, just so minute you wouldn't know the difference. He's just inches off of yours. But then you've got the guy over in the orchestra pit, or the guy up under the balcony, or the partially obscured view behind the pillar, and you're sitting like this, or the guy way up in the nosebleed in the balcony. They're all in different spots in the theater with different perspectives and different vantage points, but they're all watching the same play.
Right.
And so their interpretations might change depending on the angle they're sitting or the perspective or what they heard or didn't hear. And I'm talking about when these theaters were built. That's why I use the example of the old theaters before sound systems and things like that. And so I kind of said it's not about where you're sitting in the theater. It's about the play that's going up on stage. And because the play doesn't change. Nothing changes about the play depending on where you're sitting and from what perspective you're viewing it. So what does that then say our responsibility is supposed to be? If we take this and use this example and extrapolate it over into making big decisions about big things to believe. The play we're watching, is the play different for this guy on the other side of the world than it is for me? Or just my perspective is different? My vantage point is different.
Yeah.
Chuck Thurston said, you never want a seat up front. I got to tell you, I had friends when I was a kid. We went to the movies. They always wanted the front row. And you're sitting like,
well, that way the screen's bigger. It's more
you're
intense.
watching a movie up there, and I'm like,
my neck hurts.
distorted. And so, yeah, you don't want the upfront seats. But I always figure the width of the screen, depth from your seat to the width of the screen should be about equal. And I like to get up right about eye level with the screen. You know?
My biggest thing is I gotta sit as close to the center of the screen as I can. That is my If I get way off of the side because it's crowded, I'm grumpy for the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then if it's a good one, it sucks me in and I forget all about it. But still,
I went on a blind date with somebody. Not a blind date; it was a date with somebody way back. We're talking. Okay, the movie was Rain Man, so that tells you how long ago that was. What was that 1989?
I went to the Toothpick restaurant.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it's right across the Ohio River in Kentucky from Cincinnati.
Oh, nice.
And my aunt lives in Cincinnati, and I stayed with her for a summer, and she's like, hey, we're going to go to this place over across the river in Kentucky, and I think you'll think it's really cool. I'm like, okay. So I get in there, and they have a picture of some of the people from the cast and everything on the wall, and I'm like, yeah, the toothpick scene was shot here in Rain Man.
How did they pick a location in Cincinnati for a movie?
I have no idea.
There's just this little restaurant in Cincinnati. By the way, I was born in Cincinnati. My dad still lives outside of Cincinnati.
Okay.
So I know that was an amazing fact that you're going to.
Well, now that begs a question. Well, it begs two questions.
Are
the
we
first
related?
Question, well, that would be interesting. That'd be funny.
I can marry you. You're my cousin.
Right.
Not even my cousin. I mean,
the two questions that it raises in me are: one, how long did you live there? And two, Skyline or Gold Star?
Skyline or Gold Star?
Ah,
You have
okay.
no point of reference for me.
No, none. Cincinnati chili.
Oh, now it does, but you had to remind me of that. No
What?
point of reference. What's that, John?
I have no clue what you guys are talking about.
Chili.
Yeah, Cincinnati has a very unique kind of chili. It's actually more like a bolognese in terms of texture. So it's like a meat sauce.
Right.
Italian style.
Sign language for those who are not
Right.
understanding.
Yeah. And yeah, so the two going brands that compete in Cincinnati are Skyline and Gold Star, and the rivalry is literally as deep and as heated as Pepsi versus Coke back in the 80s and 90s.
I don't know any of that about Cincinnati. I was born there, didn't grow up there.
Yeah. Okay. See that would, and that the question about how long did you live there would have answered the second one.
I got basically squeezed out in Cincinnati. And we moved to Minneapolis.
God.
So
Got it now. Yeah.
no, my mom and dad were both from Cincinnati. So
you should ask them.
And my dad's still there. Yeah, I should ask him about the chili.
Yeah, it's
He lives. He's a little bit out in the sticks, though. I think I want to say it's east of Cincinnati, about 40 miles. He grew up in Cincinnati, lived there his whole life. Bought some land out there. He's near the Serpent Mounds.
So is he like out in Hillsboro or?
Yes, Hillsboro. He's brought up. He is New Vienna.
Okay, because my grandmother lived in Hillsboro for decades, and my grandparents still live in Sardinia, or Sardinia, depending on how Italian you want to get with it.
What part of the South you're from?
Right, and yeah, so used to go out there all the time. So I know that area pretty well.
He's out New Vienna. You go another 25 minutes and you're in Peebles, which is Serpent Mound area.
Have you been to the Serpent Mounds?
I have.
It's a cool place.
It's a very
Serpent
cool
Mounds in
place.
Ohio.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
my dad wants us to move down there. He wants to give us some land to live on down there, which I said, Dad, I can't buy land from you. And he goes, it'll all be yours one day anyway. So I'm like, oh, cool. But he would like us to move the family down there.
It's gorgeous down there. I'd
live down there in a heartbeat.
We've got the family, my dad's side of the family, we still have 330 acres. The dad's side of the family, and really more like grandma's side of the family, but like used to own a massive amount of land, like county plus worth of land down, and it's just gradually sold off over the years and generations and whatnot. So we got like 300 some acres still left.
Whenever I hear somebody talk about land in Ohio, for 25 years now, this has got into my brain because my dad lives in Ohio.
Yeah.
And every time I think of it, I think of the British actor who played Lord Cornwallis in the movie Revolution. Mel Gibson's movie.
Patriot.
And he rolls out a map at some point with the bad guy, the baddie in the film.
Right.
And tells him, I have 3,000 acres in Ohio.
Jason Isaacs, he plays in Patriot as bad guy.
Yes, that's he played.
He shot. My dad used to comment how ruthless he played in when he shot Mel Gibson's son on the farm.
Well, that was Jason Isaacs, right?
Jason
Isaacs. Yeah.
That wasn't Lord Cornwallis.
He can out brutal boy.
No, he played
he was the Dragoon commander. I can't think of his name.
He was a Dragoon British officer, right?
He was who was a real guy.
Based on
an amalgamation of a couple of different guys.
Right, yeah.
Good movie.
Really cool. My dad said.
By the way, and I mentioned this the other day when that movie came out. I think it was 95 or 98, something like that.
Hold on. I feel the arthritis setting in now all of a sudden.
Yes.
Oh.
And we Yeah, that's the year you were born, wasn't it?
83. I'm not
So
that young.
we got to go to the Mall of America, to the cinema there,
Yeah.
with our group, the Highland Regiment,
Hmm.
which we were the British redcoats and the kilts and the muskets and all that. 1759, we portrayed a company of the 42nd Royal Highlanders during the French and Indian War.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the character, Mel Gibson's character, had fought in the French and Indian War.
Right.
In this movie.
Yeah.
And so we came in and we had 20 to 25 of us all in uniform, with muskets, believe it or not. This is pre 9/11. So with muskets in the Mall of America. I say pre 9/11 because so many things like that changed.
Right.
Yeah. But we've got our muskets and our swords, and we're milling about in the lobby, teaching people history of the French and Indian War and the American Revolution.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was cool. And then at the beginning of each showing, they had our whole group. They brought up the house lights before the movie started, and we'd march down to the front of the theater with our muskets on our shoulders, and all in a line across the front. And our captain would read something. He just pulled something from the Stamp Act. And each one of you, after tonight's performance, will need to billet 2 soldiers in your homes. And the audience caught on real quick, and they'd start boo, boo. They're booing, and he'd look from his parchment. He'd be reading, and he'd go, and he yells back. He goes, "Fix bayonets!" And then and we had our bayonets all up, and so which was very cool. And then we marched out, and then we got to watch the last showing of the night, which was the midnight show. But one of the best scenes for us, experiences for us during that movie was, do you remember the scene where we're fighting the French and in the French and Indian War? But do you remember the scene where he first meets the French colonel, Captain Colonel, whatever he is?
Oh,
the guy hates him because of things that took place during the French and Indian War. And he's trying to talk to him. They're on horseback. They saddle up, and he tries to talk to him. Well, did you have any children back home? And the Frenchman just glares at him and turns around and rides off. And Gibson turns his horse and goes, French, like that. And we just all burst out laughing because all we do is taunt and insult the French when we were doing our reenacting. We would teach kids. Now, I talked about this the other day. We would teach kids, when we would take kids during school days of these reenactments, we'd teach them how we marched. And so these kids were all lined up, and we'd teach them phrases. And I'd say, now we're going to teach you a wee little bit of French. Do y'all know how to speak French? You know, and I don't even have my Scottish accent down right now. But and I'd say to the kids, I'd say, repeat this after me.
Oh boy.
I'd say, no. And they'd all go, no. And I go, rendon. They'd all go, rendon. I go, les armes. Les armes. I said, now put that all together. Nous rendons les armes. Nous rendons les armes. And I said, now, when we walk by, we're going to march you by the French camp. When we pass the French camp, I'm going to call out, what's that great French cry in war, battle cry? Nous rendons les armes. And if anybody speaks French out there, you know what that means. It means we lay down our arms. And basically, we surrendered.
What's that old thing where it's like you're flipping through the magazine, or you're going through the surplus store, and it's like, we have a French Moss 36 rifle.
Right.
They dropped once, never fired, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, nous rendons les armes. All of you remember that. All right, folks, we were going to quit about a half an hour ago. We were going to go to bed. Be done. So, I'm going to let you guys go.
All right.
Get out of here. Hey, John, thanks for coming on tonight, brother. Good to have you here. I'm glad you made it in. Thanks for your contribution this evening. And I'm going to let you go because we're going to sign off.
Yeah.
Got any wise words, sage words for us before you leave?
Peace.
All right, that'll do. All right, John. You have a good night, brother. Good to have you here.
Take care,
Matthew, same for you, brother. We'll see you later. Thanks for being here.
guys. Have a good one.
And Jason, good to have you come on. Glad you're here, brother.
Always glad to join in.
All right, we'll see you later. And everybody else, thank you for being here. And by the way, I got to mention, Chuck Thurston said he was up in Washington working crab season. Crab season around here is all year long for me. Hey, you kids, get off my grass. Crab season. Lame dad joke. But I'm glad you're over the COVID, and crabbing was more fun. I'll bet it was. So everybody that's here, thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for listening in. We'll be back on Sunday morning with It's Sunday with Scotty and maybe another rainy sighting like we had last week. So hopefully, I think it was last week. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. So we'll see what happens with that. So thanks for being here tonight. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go to bed. And I think you should do the same thing. Now, you can't stay here. You don't have to go home. That's the line. We always said at the end of the festival, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So thanks for being here. Live long and prosper. See you on Sunday.